fucking stone. Break it to the Kristen Glover dance. Popping and locking. Jesus, Christmas! Oh, you brought me a beer! Thank you!
You're welcome, Maggot Head. So, what are we doing today?
Well, I was just taking a look through all your movies and I was just looking at your Friday the 13th collection. It looks like you have the entire set.
I have all of them.
Excellent.
And did you know that this year there are going to be 3 Friday the 13th?
Three
Three
wow.
of them. Why don't we rank them? So basically this is the concept. Mike and I each made our own separate lists from our favorite to our least favorite. We then did a point system. We combined our lists and came up with one grand total. So this is our combined effort for the top 13 Friday the 13th movies.
13, isn't there just 12?
That's right, the top 13. So, coming in at dead last, number 13 is from 1993, Jason Goes to Hell. What did you think of that one?
I thought it was absolutely terrible.
One of the worst.
One of the worst.
Going on to number 12 is Jason X from 2001. What did you think of that?
I actually liked it because, you know, I had a good experience. It was the first Jason movie I saw in the theater, and every time Jason got a kill, the whole crowd erupted in applause.
We did this list. Our opinions differ a little bit. I had this really low. You had it fairly high. New Line Cinema had recently acquired the rights to this franchise from Paramount, and they were promising us the long-awaited Freddy vs. Jason crossover movie. That was caught in pre-production limbo, and they just kind of threw this at us. Like, hey, here's a movie to tide you over. They basically came right out and said that. But it does have one of the coolest Jason kills ever when he freezes that girl's head and he smashes it over the countertop and shatters it into pieces. Love that. So number 11, from 1988, Part 7, The New Blood.
I thought it was a little bit weird because it's a girl that has special telekinesis powers. There was a really good kill in there where this girl tried escaping from Jason by hiding in her sleeping bag, but he ended up just wrapping her around the tree. And the NES cover came from that movie too.
I gotta say, for the original 8 movies, this is my least favorite, but I still kind of enjoy it. There's a lot of those like window-shattering kills and stuff that the series is known for. It has some really noteworthy moments in it, but not the best one. So number 10, we have the 2009 remake. Didn't care for it that much, but it wasn't terrible.
I actually enjoyed it.
One of the coolest scenes, definitely, is you get those 2 teens out on the boat, and you're like, you know they're gonna die, and all of a sudden this arrow just slaps right through the guy's head. It was produced as somewhat of a direct sequel to the original film. At number 9, we've got Part 5, A New Beginning from 1985. This one is not that extremely popular. It doesn't have Jason Voorhees in it. It's actually a copycat killer. I personally feel this is a very underrated movie. It's very suspenseful, it's got a little bit of gore, a lot of the things you expect from the series. I think it's pretty good. And then at number 8, we have the documentary, His Name is Jason. You might make the argument we only included this to get the list up to 13. You're right, but it ranked pretty high. What do you think of this?
I thought it was pretty good. Tom Savini talked about all the movies.
It includes interviews with a lot of people that were involved with the production of these movies, as well as many of the actors. It's a great documentary, actually.
Yeah, very informative.
So at number 7, we have from 1981, Friday the 13th, Part 2.
And this one, Jason didn't have the hockey mask. It was just a burlap sack with one of the eyes cut out.
Which draws heavy inspiration from the Elephant Man movie that came out prior to that. The earlier installments in the series relied very heavily on suspense. They didn't resort to the slapstick that the series has become known for, so I kind of appreciate some of those earlier ones that they put out.
Alright, rounding at number 6, we have Part 6, Jason Lives. The one thing I liked about this is Alice Cooper did 3 of the songs that were featured on this one. Then the overall music was actually a different rendition of the theme song from The Shining. And it also has in the intro, just as soon as Jason kills his first victim, and he comes from right to left and he throws the machete at the screen just like in James Bond.
One thing that's really interesting, this is actually the only installment in the series with no cursing and no nudity. Director Tom McLaughlin actually cites Frankenstein as a big inspiration. It also had that really cool scene with the RV crashing, the girl getting her face slammed through the bathroom wall. Extremely good installment in the series, yes. One of the better sequels without a doubt. And then at number 5 we have Part 1 from 1980, the original. This actually, it feels like a little bit of a slow pace compared to a lot of the other ones. It doesn't really resort to the slapstick stuff that the series has become known for, but that drawn-out pace kind of gives it a little extra suspense.
You don't know who the killer is, and you're only seeing through the eyes of the killer, and it also features Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, an interesting note on that. Tom Savini was responsible for the special effects. They actually had a tube that they were blowing on to squirt the blood out of Kevin Bacon's neck. A little mishap, it got clogged up and they had to blow harder, and that's where you get that splurt of blood that goes all over his face. So at number 4 we have Part 3 from 1982. It was originally in 3D, and honestly, I'd recommend watching it that way if you get the chance.
Yeah, there's like a yo-yo scene, there's a snake coming out at you, there's a harpoon that comes at you, baseball bat sticks.
Another really cool thing, remember in the first one you had Jason jumping out of the water and attacking the girl? This one you get a little role reversal and Mrs. Voorhees jumps out and attacks the girl again. Really cool ending.
Really good. And this one is where he goes from his burlap sack, with the one eye, and he actually gets the hockey mask.
Yeah, it's hard to think of Jason Voorhees without his signature hockey mask, but yeah, the first 2 installments, it was nowhere to be found, and it was introduced in this one.
And the distinguishing mark with the cut over the left brow that was caused from an axe hit. Number 3, we got Part 4, the final chapter.
Tom Savini was brought back for the first time since the original film, and he was given the task of actually killing Jason Voorhees. I can't say I really care for the whole final climatic scene where the machete is in the side of the head and it slides down his face. It hasn't held up that well, but overall it's a really great movie.
Yeah, and it's got the young Corey Feldman and Crispin Glover, who's a bit awkward and ridiculous like his real life.
Number 2, we have Freddy vs. Jason from 2003. This ranked pretty high. They made us wait an awful long time for this crossover.
Yes.
But for those of us that are diehard fans, it was well worth it. It's more of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie featuring Jason Voorhees. The two of them have this big clash. That's what we were all waiting for.
This was another one I saw in the theater, and as soon as Jason's walking away with Freddy's head, and then Freddy gives that little wink, and he's just like, oh yes, he's alive because he's in that dream phase.
Yeah, I've got to say, when I was a kid, I watched much more of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but before I ever watched a single one of the Friday the 13th films, I dressed up as Jason and went trick-or-treating. It was such an iconic character in our day. Growing up in the 80s, everybody knew who Freddy and Jason were, and they were larger than life.
Oh yeah.
So, we've gotten through 12 of them. It's time for number 1. But before we get to that, normally this is where we would do our honorable mention section. But today that doesn't really apply. So, let's see here. Over the years, Jason has amassed quite the body count. What was your favorite kill?
My favorite kill is he's up on the top of a building and he takes a guy by the shirt, punches his head off, literally head flies off, lands into a dumpster, and dumpster closes. And
very good choice.
That was my favorite kill. What's one of your favorite shticks of the series?
Oh yeah, those things you see again and again and again. These movies never really quite feel complete to me until I see some broken glass. You saw Jason throw dead bodies through the windows. You saw him lunge through the windows. You saw him grab people through the windows. We even saw a dog go through a window. I love it.
If there's not broken glass, it's not a Friday the 13th.
You got movie. That right. So what did we have at number 1?
Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan.
And this was a unanimous choice. We didn't agree on a lot of things with this list. This was definitely
2 things we agreed on. Jason Goes to Hell was 0, or
it was bad.
The worst, and Part 8 was the best. What did you think of the movie?
You can kind of break this movie up into 2 parts. The first half, they're on a boat, they're in a confined space, there's nowhere to run. It throws back to the earlier installments in the series. It's suspenseful and it's gory. Then all of a sudden they arrive in New York City and there's everywhere to hide. Yet somehow Jason manages to track them down and stalk and try and kill all of these characters. And the depiction of New York City is so off the mark that it's amusing. There's bubbling barrels of toxic waste. There are punk rockers listening to rap music, but because of the intensity of the earlier part of the movie, you just welcome the sort of slapstick of the second half of it.
Yeah, and it overdoes the violence that you would think that New York has.
Yeah, the series became somewhat divided. And this sort of gives you the best of both worlds. Hands down, our favorite.
Yes.
No question about it. But this Friday the 13th, good luck to you. Thanks for watching The Real Bit Wars.
Stay away from the black cats.